Hi, and welcome to Finding Your Way Through Therapy, a proud member of the Sightcraft Network. The goal of this podcast is to demystify therapy, what can happen in therapy, and the wide array of conversations you can have in and about therapy. Through personal experiences, guests will talk about therapy, their experiences with it, and how psychology and therapy are present in many places in their lives, with lots of authenticity and a touch of humor. Here is your host, Steve Bisson.
Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour, bonsoir. Ladies and gentlemen, good day, good night. Welcome to episode 182. If you haven't listened to episode 181 yet, please do so. It was with Daniel Guspo-Derrick. I think I got it right now. We talked about traumatic brain injury. We talked about how it affects therapy and all those great things. So I hope you enjoy that. Go back and listen to that. But on episode 182, we're going to be talking to Craig Meriwether. Craig is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, medical hypnotherapist, and neurolinguist programming specialist. He founded Arizona Integrity Hypnotherapy, helping people eliminate negative emotions and limiting beliefs that may be keeping them from reaching their full potential. Over 12 years, he's worked with childhood trauma, cancer patient with pain control, PTSD, with children who have anxiety, children with nightmares, and entrepreneurs with confidence as well as peak performance. And he is also someone who created a book and a course called Ace Any Tests. So please go look out for that. But anyway, just very excited. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and here it is. GetFree.ai. Yes, you've heard me talk about it previously in other episodes, but I'm going to talk about it again because GetFree.ai is just a great service. Imagine being able to pay attention to your clients all the time instead of writing notes and making sure that the note's going to sound good and how are you going to write that note and things like that. GetFree.ai liberates you from making sure that you're writing what the client is saying, because it is keeping track of what you're saying and will create, after the end of every session, a progress note. But it goes above and beyond that. Not only does it create a progress note, it also gives you suggestions for goals, gives you even a mental status if you've asked questions around that, as well as being able to write a letter for your client to know what you talked about. So that's the great thing. It saves me time, it saves me a lot of aggravation, and it just speeds up the progress note process so well. And for $99 a month, I know that that's nothing. That's worth my time. That's worth my money. You know, the best part of it too is that if you want to go and put in the code Steve50 when you get the service, at the checkout code is Steve50, you get $50 off your first month. And if you get a whole year, you save a whole 10% for the whole year. So again, Steve50 at checkout for getfree.ai will give you $50 off for the first month. And like I said, get a full year, get 10% off, get freed from writing notes, get freed from always scribbling while you're talking to a client, and just paying attention to your client so they win out, you win out, everybody wins. And I think that this is the greatest thing. And if you're up to a point where you got to change the treatment plan, well, the goals are generated for you. So getfree.ai, code Steve50 to save $50 on your first month. Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 182. You know, I'm very excited to talk about this subject. You know, I don't know about a whole lot about hypnotherapy. I do know a little bit, but I don't know a whole lot. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from Craig Meriwether. I got your name right? I always
That's perfect.
make sure people get my name is always butchered, so I want to make sure. But Craig, you know, contacted me, and I thought it was a great, fascinating stuff because I'm curious about the subject. I don't know a whole lot. So anyway, we're going to be talking about that. So Craig, welcome to Finding Your Way Through Therapy.
Hey, thanks, Steve. I really appreciate giving the chance to talk about this, especially with your audience. Obviously, they very interested in topics of, behavior and mental health and emotional health, and so any way I can spread the word about hypnotherapy, because I know there's so many misconceptions and myths around it just because of TV and movies and Las Vegas shows and all that. So it'll be fun to have a conversation about all that and see
I
what
agree.
happens. Yeah.
I think that that's what when I think about it, I've been to a couple of those shows where
Yeah.
the hypnotherapy where they make you do funny things. And I know that people always perceive it. The one thing I always tell people, I don't know much about it, but you can't do anything you're not willing to do
No,
consciously.
no. And
Right.
it's sort of like somebody going to a dead, a Grateful Dead concert. And so, oh, I'm not going to one of those. They're going to make me dance and spin around. So, no, I'm not. You dance and spin around because you want to, or so I'm
Right.
not going to, a club because they're going to make me dance. No one's making you dance. No one's doing anything. You volunteer to get on the dance floor. You volunteer to go to the floor of a Grateful Dead concert and spin around. And every single person who gets up on that stage volunteers to go up there.
Right.
And that's what I think a lot of people get caught up in. And I understand it. They watch people maybe on YouTube video or a comedy club or a Las Vegas show, and they see people singing like Elvis Presley and dancing like Michael Jackson and quacking like ducks and barking like dogs, pretending they're on a roller coaster, whatever the gag is. And it's funny, but you also don't want to act like the fool. It's embarrassing. It can be humiliating. But to a certain kind of person, that's fun for them.
Right.
you know. And every single person, again, not only did they buy a ticket to be at that show, they sat down in their seat, and when the hypnotist comes out, he or she, they come out and they say, "Hey, everybody, who wants to come up on stage and have a great time?" And a bunch of people raise their hands. Now, some people are kind of halfway raising their hands. Other people are jumping up and down and waving their hands around. Me, pick me. Who's the person going to pick? They're going to pick the
Right.
excited person because they're going to have a great show. And you go to those Las Vegas shows, even the kind of names you've never heard of before are still $80. And
Right.
so they need to have a great show. They need to entertain the people so they come back. So this person has a career as an entertainment hypnotist. And so everybody who goes up there not only volunteered to get up there, they're actually going to run them through little tests to see how able they are to get into some sort of trance-like state to get to that level of having fun. And and every single person, they'll go down the line, what's your name? Where are you from? And you're here to have a good time. And do you want to go into hypnosis and just have a fun night? Yes, I do. They say yes like 7 times before this person makes them do something. So it's really about your intention. Your intention in terms of a hypnotherapy show, or not hypnotherapy, but a hypnotist show
Yeah.
is to have fun, to entertain. You're an exhibitionist, you're an extrovert. That's not how I want to spend my evening. And I don't think I know anybody who would be interested in volunteering for a show, but there are people out there. They want to have fun, and that's how they do it. They want to show off and be the center of attention. And not, I don't mean that in a bad way, but they just like being up on stage. And to them, that seems like a challenge, an adrenaline rush and something unique and fun that you really probably only going to do once in your life. And
Right.
so they get to be up there, have a good time, sing like Elvis Presley, dance like Michael Jackson, and at the end of the show, they have a big smile on their face because they had a great time. So it's really about your intention. And if your intention is to entertain, to have a fun time, to have a silly video to put up on TikTok or Instagram, that's great. You're going to have that. On the other hand, what if your intention is to heal? And that's where this conversation can get really interesting because Dr. Irving Kirsch called hypnotherapy a non-deceptive placebo, meaning that a placebo using mind to heal body. Of course, like let's say a pharmaceutical company is doing some sort of research on a high blood pressure medication, heart
Right.
medication, something. Half the group's going to get that sugar pill. We all know that sugar pill thing is to trick the people into healing themselves. They do that because they know mind will heal the body. They actually have to account for that in their research. So let's say they're doing this high blood pressure medication. Half the people in the study are getting the sugar pill, 30% get better. Literally 30% of those people healed themselves through thought alone. They thought they were taking some sort of medication, so they were tricked into healing themselves, but there was no medicinal value. So they literally healed themselves. Let's say 40% of the group that was getting the real medication gets better, they actually have to subtract 30% because maybe they got better through mine too. The medication had nothing to do with it. They actually healed themselves because, oh, I'm getting medication. My body will and my mind will just heal itself. So really only 10% got better on the medication. That's good enough. We'll throw on the market at 50 bucks a pill. But nobody really, really looks at, yeah, but more people actually heal themselves through mind. And
Right.
so Dr. Irving Kirsch calls this a non-deceptive placebo because we're not going to trick you into healing yourself. You're going to do it on purpose. And that's really how powerful you are. There's tons of study in the literature and anecdotal stories that you hear about doctors of just like people, whether it's spontaneous healing, they call them miracle healings, or over time realizing that they're in some sort of research and people there was that research done on the knee surgery that got so famous maybe a decade ago at this point.
Yeah.
BBC documentary about it where they're trying to figure out whether flushing or scraping method for arthroscopic knee surgery was best. And so to get it published, you have to have the control group. And so they literally did fake surgery on a third of the people. Fake surgery, wheeled them into surgery, gassed them out, pretended to do a surgery in case you're kind of halfway awake, but not really awake. And since it's arthroscopic, they had video monitors of somebody else's knee surgery. There's scalpel and asking for tools and all this stuff. 45 minutes surgery. All they did was kind of cut the knee like they would, sewed up the knee with two little stitches. I mean, done nothing else to the knee. And those people got as better as the other groups who actually got surgery.
Yep. I
They
remember
literally,
this.
these people who are in walkers and canes are now grandparents, now playing basketball with their grandchildren. And they had no idea they healed themselves. They followed them for like 2 years and then told them they got fake surgery and they healed themselves. It's extraordinary what the mind can actually do to heal the body, you know.
Well,
And hypnotherapy helps you with that.
I don't want to stop you, but like this is all good stuff, but we don't even know who Craig Meriwether is. I didn't even introduce yourself. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself because this is a great conversation. I was going to go and follow up, and I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't even ask him who he was. I know who you are. We had a conversation, but how
Yeah,
about
that's
for my
right.
audience?
Yeah, we were having a great conversation beforehand, so I just started running right into this because to me it's one of the most exciting things to be able to tap into mind. And the reason why I kind of got into this work is I grew up with my own issues. Depression and anxiety started when I was a teenager, so this is the 1980s. And I've done my share of talk therapy. I mean, when um, there were some issues within my family, and we were doing therapy, and it was just, I don't know, it was weird and strange because it was kind of hippie-like, and it was back in the early 1980s in San Diego. And I don't know, it was just kind of weird and strange and off. And when I got together with my girlfriend in 1987, who's now my wife. We were 19, and we realized right away had a pretty codependent relationship after about a year because of our own struggles within our own family lives and ourselves, and we really glued ourselves to each other. We started relationship counseling at 19 to try and just make sense of what we were going through in our relationship and in our lives. That was extraordinarily helpful. I love talk therapy, and done it on and off over the years. Just, in terms of checkups, it's always great to have a second pair of eyes on something. Any champion, any gold medal Olympian has a coach, I mean, probably multiple coaches. Look at a baseball player. Probably has a batting coach, a throwing coach, a running coach, a physical therapist, a nutritionalist, all that stuff. So it's always great to have a coach. And when I was growing up, like I said, my high school years, really the only thing you could do back then when you're struggling with depression and anxiety, is whatever book you could find at the library or the bookstore or talk therapy if you could find somebody who could help. But, a teenage guy is not going to go out and look for talk therapy or even understand maybe what that was all about.
Right.
The the issues within the family uh, when I was growing up, I didn't at that point didn't have a great idea of what talk therapy was about. And so, the SSRI drugs didn't come out to what, the late 80s, early 1990s, and really didn't become popular until the late 1990s. So it was really just, maintain, you know,
Right.
just try to get through each and every day. And after a while, it's just like, yeah, this is the way it is, you know. This is how life is. Why would you know any different? sort of like describing color to a blind person. Why would you know any different uh, if this is the way you felt all the time? And sure, there's sunshine here and there, but it's sort of like maybe living in the Pacific Northwest or maybe London or something. It's just like gray a
Right.
lot of the time. And so I kind of struggled through that through the 90s. And it was really the birth of my son in the year 2001 that I really thought, okay, I need to get my act together. Of course, I'm older now. Uh, I'm in my 30s, and I just had enough. It's that whole cliche of I'm tired of being tired. And with the birth of my son, or at least my wife being pregnant, and it's like, okay, I got to get it together. I got to get it together now because if my mom struggled with depression, I struggle with depression and anxiety, there's a great chance that my son's going to as well. Whether it's just mirroring what's going on in the home,
Right.
whether it's a genetic component that gets triggered, either way, nature or nurture, there's a good chance that he's going to struggle with it as well. So what can I do to help that? Sometimes if you're not strong enough to do it for yourself, you'll do it for somebody else.
Right.
And so it's really a lot of trial and error, a lot of experimentation. This is 2001, so the internet's out there at that point, had been for some years. And of course, with the SSRI drugs came a lot of attention about depression. A lot of the conversations started happening about depression. It took it, if there's I know there's a lot of controversy about that kind of stuff, and that's not what this conversation is about. But if nothing else, it brought that conversation to mainstream, I guess, if you want to say that. It brought it out of the shadows, and
Right.
you could have a healthy discussion about it because you realized a lot of your friends were struggling with depression too and anxiety. And so there's a lot more information about it. One of the things that when I was researching just on my own self, what I can do, the strategies, the techniques, the tools, was whenever there was a book, a blog post, a radio interview, a lecture, or something, they'd always or at least often have some sort of bullet points at the end or a top five list, or here's what you can do to change your life. A Tony Robbins kind of thing, or whoever it was. There's like, here's things you can do to change your life. And they'd usually all be different. But one pretty consistent was hypnotherapy. They
Okay.
always mentioned hypnotherapy. And so you see this word over and over again, this technique, this modality. And so I started looking into it and seeing what it was about. And it sounds fascinating. Tap into the subconscious mind, heal the coding, if you will, the computer coding that may have been installed unconsciously, maybe through traumatic event,
Right.
circumstance, situation in your life, and reprogram it,
Were you a
or heal.
therapist then when you were looking into that stuff?
No, no, I never specifically like did any hypnotherapy before that. Like when I was seeing other kind of talk therapy, that's more your, I guess what people would think of as a stereotypical talk therapy session.
Right.
So I'd never done it before. And so I specifically sought out a hypnotherapist and was living in kind of central California at that point, Santa Cruz, just south of San Francisco, and found somebody to work with. And I thought it was amazing. I thought it was absolutely amazing. And after some time of working on myself and practicing, because it's not just what you might do in a session, as you know.
Right.
And I don't need to tell everybody, you, Steve, and all your audience what you already know, but it's just like, it's not
But some
just,
people do not know, so it's fine to say
yeah.
it.
So it's not just that you go to a therapy session, whatever modality you feel is right for you and in the situation you're in, but it's what you do afterwards too. What are you practicing? You just don't get to go to a personal trainer once and then you're in shape for the rest of your life. You got to go to the gym every day or at least a couple of times a week,
Right.
and to keep your body in shape. And we expect that. We know that. We know you got to eat right. We know you got to drink your water. You know you got to exercise in some way, whether it's a dance class or martial arts or walking around the park or whatever it is, or going to the gym. We know that. So what about your emotional health? What about your mental health? Why wouldn't it be the same that every day you have to do something to maintain, if not strengthen and empower your mental health and emotional health as well as your physical health?
Right.
And so, uh, in terms of what I was doing, it it was, of course, some hypnotherapy to help with the deeper pain and the deeper wounds that I was dealing with. But along with all the other kind of techniques and strategies I was using in my life at that time, I woke up one morning and just like, that realized that heaviness had been gone for a while. It's kind of like the reverse frog in the pot situation.
Right.
It's just like, oh, I don't feel that heaviness anymore. I feel really good. I feel lighter. And I realized I hadn't felt that depression and that anxiety in a really long time. It's new baby, new town. We moved to Flagstaff, Arizona, new careers and just, life. And so it was a kind of an on and off, a trial and error kind of thing for a little bit. But I'd realized that I'd rewired myself. I rewired my brain. I reset my nervous system. And so since then, it's just been this kind of exploration of how else can people change. And, one thing led to another, and this and that and the other thing. And all of a sudden, I had the opportunity to actually train as a hypnotherapist. And because it just always fascinated me, especially when you look at athletes, when you look at people who have been in extraordinary trauma and the kind of healing that can happen. So not only, something as extraordinary as healing as trauma, but also looking at maybe an athlete, it's really coming down to mind. We know how to create peak state
Right.
within the physical body. So, and since gold medals are won by a hundredth of a second, basically nowadays, it's really coming down to mind. And
Right.
so, looking at the work they're doing in sports psychology and mental rehearsal and all these different kinds of things, it just fascinated me beyond belief. And so, I had the opportunity to go to the Hypnotherapy Academy of
Before we go
America.
down that road,
Oh, sure.
I mean, I'm going to reiterate the question I asked. Were you a therapist then when you started discovering hypnotherapy and all that? Or were you working in another field? Or that's kind of
Oh,
what the question was. I want to come back to it.
yeah, yeah. I was not a therapist. Then what I had been doing was, I guess, being an advocate for changing your life. I wouldn't say
Okay.
I was on any sort of level of Tony Robbins or anything like that, but I had written a book. Again, long story, but real quickly, I got involved in a writing contest with Hay House back in 2010 or so, and because I joined a mastermind group with some other friends in Flagstaff, and we wanted to change the world. It's like how can we do that and support each other and encourage each other and watch out for each other. And I mentioned, yeah, there's this book contest. You two should like join this thing and write a book or something. They're like, I don't want to write a book. Why don't you write a book? I was like, well, okay, I guess you keep talking about on read out about depression. You have all these tools and techniques, and so I wrote a
Such a guy conversation, too. No, you do it. No, you do it.
And it's kind of thing, yeah, the other two st took a step back and I was standing in front, so I guess I'm doing it. And so yeah, I wrote this book. It was one of those things where you had to submit a chapter every month and start off with 200 people, and then it's down to 100 people, and then it's down to 50 people, and then it's down to 10 people, and all that kind of thing. And so I made it to like the top five or something like that. And while I didn't win the publishing contract, I did get my book out there, Depression 180, and I was able to kind of start a little bit of a relationship with Hay House and got into this book called Pearls of Wisdom. But and then it was right after that that I was like, oh, I can go to the Hypnotherapy Academy, and so that's how that happened.
And Louise Hay, who is the Hay House person,
Mhm.
just want to mention that because I think they still to this day do that contest.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When 2010, I guess it was a subsidiary called Hierophant. I don't know if that's still out there, but it was basically Hay House. But
Yeah,
yeah, you still do. It was actually really fun. I'm sure a lot of the people already had their book written and there's so many chapters, but every month it was just like this power it out and try to get a chapter written and it's all the research and I wanted everything referenced and yeah, it was fun, but don't know that I want to do it again like that intensely.
well, I like to because I've written a book and I know a lot of people ask me about how to write a book. I'm like, there's plenty of ways, plenty of opportunities, plenty of different ways to do it. So that's why I want to mention that.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Bec-
writing books is fun, but I think I think what a lot of people miss out on, again, there's a totally different conversation for maybe an entirely different show, but writing your book is like 5% of it. The other 95% is marketing. because
You forgot
and
no, no, it's
we're
40/45, and what you forgot about is editing.
editing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Editing.
The editing to me was like the torture that I went through.
Yeah. And I'll give you another big piece of advice. Never go into a Barnes and Noble or a library or anything because you're writing your book and you walk in here and all of a sudden, who are these 2,000 other books in this bookstore? And that's just,
Right.
that bookstore. There's millions of books and it's extraordinary, especially nowadays with self-publishing and all the things you can do. Now AI, GTP and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, that's a little bit of cheating if you ask me, but
Oh, it's super cheating, but it's also, a fun way to get creative. And so write to write if you enjoy writing. There's maybe three or four authors, Stephen King, J.K. Rowling, Anne Rice, who maybe make serious money. I think a best-selling book is something like 25,000 copies. If you sell 50,000, you'll get a second book written, 100,000, and you are a superstar. So when you see these, Stephen King novels going for 1 million copies a week, that's rare. That's 0.0001%. Usually, you're selling a couple thousand copies, if that, and that's only if you have your own tribe and your
yeah.
own community that to send the word out to.
I love Brene Brown, and she wrote a few books, but she'll say it herself, it's not the books that are making me rich, is those appearances afterwards.
Oh yeah.
But let's get back to a little bit of hypnotherapy because I think that's a fascinating subject. You know, one of the things that I wondered about is with hypnotherapy, especially with people with nervousness, anxiousness, stuff like that. Is this something that you recommend to those individuals? Do you think that could be helpful
Yeah.
for that? Or do you think that it's like, no, go do CBT or whatever the alphabet soup of the week is?
Yeah. Um, I would say if you can find trusted practitioner in your area, or nowadays, I'd say probably 85% of the sessions I do are over Zoom nowadays because it's really great because people feel relaxed and comfortable in their homes, they feel safe in their homes, so it works really, really well. But at the very, very least, you're going to learn how to take back control of your nervous system and learn how to turn off that anxiety and stress. If it's related to something, certainly there can be some healing there. Even if it's hard to work with people if they're schizophrenic or bipolar 2 or something like that. You really need somebody who kind of has control of their faculties. But even with bipolar 2 and schizophrenia, you can at least teach them how to relax.
Right.
Their reset their nervous systems, turn off the sympathetic nervous system, the stress response. And that alone is extraordinarily helpful. In terms of using hypnotherapy, the the issue I find with a lot of those other things, whether it's a prescribed medication, something you can find over the counter, are you not just masking the situation? And that's great for triage. If the two options are ending life or taking an antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication, take the medication. My God,
Right.
take the medication, level yourself out to a point where, okay, now I feel I'm able to work on myself. There's so much possibilities because even if you've gone through a traumatic experience in your life, let's say some early childhood trauma, that's quite extraordinary, some sort of abuse. No, it wasn't fair and it shouldn't have happened to you and it wasn't your fault. But you are responsible for the coding in your subconscious mind, if you will. You are allowed to do something about that. And so it really is, again, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. I'm sure a lot of you have
Yes.
heard that before. And what hypnotherapy allows you to do is by bypassing that conscious level of mind. Again, this isn't talk therapy. That's a totally different, wonderful modality that maybe you should probably be using at the same time, even. But by bypassing that conscious level of mind, closing your eyes, relaxing a little bit, you can access that subconscious level of mind. And sometimes it might just be as easy to ask, even if you're not sure where the anxiety is coming from, what the anger is all about, where the
Right.
sadness or despair is coming from. You know where it's coming from, at least within the unconscious mind behind that curtain. Because while it may be consistent and constant, it's not all the time, I'm guessing. There are times when there is some light, there is some joy. even if it's just watching a Seinfeld rerun or something. There's part of your day just having lunch with a friend at work, even though the rest of the workday sucks. There's a part of your, or getting off work, or Friday afternoon, or whatever. There's a part of your day, part of your week where you're maybe not hurting. And so you know it doesn't happen all the time. There's only a certain triggers within your environment. Maybe there's a lot of triggers, but there's only a certain amount of triggers. You may not know what they are, but your subconscious mind does. That's why you keep getting triggered. And these warning signals coming up, the anxiety, the anger, trying to warn you that there's danger, not unlike maybe a fire alarm in a building.
Right.
You know, if someone pulls that fire alarm, sirens go off, the lights go off, warning everybody that there's danger, you need to get to safety. We also have a warning system. That feeling state of anxiety is the brain dumping all those chemicals into your bloodstream to change the feeling state in your body to warn you that there's danger. Problem is, if you just get complacent about it, and it just feels like you're wearing a heavy, uncomfortable coat, and you just get used to it. But you don't have to get used to, you don't have to wear that coat.
Or
You take,
oversensitive to that anxiety or whatever's around you is also the opposite, but also as troublesome.
yeah, yeah. And so you're allowed to change the coding in your subconscious mind. You're allowed. Technically, and this isn't to blame the victim, this isn't to say it was your fault. It doesn't say, not to say it was fair or anything like that. But technically, you're the one who put it in there. Even as a child, unconsciously through a traumatic event, extraordinarily traumatic event, that coding of being hurt, of being wounded, was placed in there by you, and for right reasons.
Right.
And it was to keep you safe. And maybe the best thing as a child you could have done is keep yourself small and keep yourself hidden, because that was the best thing to do to keep you safe. But
Right.
that, not as an adult. That's not going to work anymore. But if that coding's still in there, why would anything change? You're allowed to change it. You're the one who put that in there. And when you realize if you're the one who put that in there, it becomes very empowering, because, well, then you can change it. You don't have to ask permission. You don't have to have somebody else tell you what your problem is and then tell you how to fix it. If you're the one who put it in there as a child, unconsciously, what can you do as an adult fully awake?
Right.
You know, it becomes really empowering, very, very strong statement to say, yeah, I can heal. You're allowed. You have the right, you have the power, you have the ability to do it. It's, I think a lot of people get stuck. A lot of people kind of spin their wheels because they don't know what the problem is. Not in your conscious mind, but your
Right.
subconscious knows exactly what it is.
Well, I go back to a couple of things. I just want to complete a little bit of what you're saying, if you don't mind. For me, I tell people like, well, if you get beaten every day by mom, dad, brother, sister, doesn't really matter, but you think that's normal for everyone else, and your mind will take it as this is normal. And when you go outside of that, when you're 20, 21, 25, 30, whatever, like, wait a minute, that's not normal? No. Oh, I can rewire my brain. Or you're talking about hypnotherapy, obviously. I like to talk about also neuroplasticity as another way to do
Oh,
so.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I think that I think I wanted to put that in because I think people don't understand that if you get used to be beaten every day, for you that's normal because you're not going to go tell your friends, hey, did you get beaten yesterday? No, you just assume it's normal. And when you have those reaction as an adult, someone has a loud noise, someone raises their voice or what have you, these are all unconscious things that make you react. But with hypnotherapy, among other things, I think that that's what you can change, right?
yeah, yeah. And you're constantly changing your perceptions of your world. Let's go to athletes just as a general example. You know, you may be a great athlete, maybe always winning the gold or world championships or whatever it is. But there may be that one time when, I don't know, example here, if you're a baseball player and you're a pitcher, you pitch for years and years and years, and then that one time the ball comes straight at you and knocks you in the head. What's that going to do to your confidence? What's going to do to that fear? Are you now going to, is it going to change the coding in your system so now you're throwing differently? Are you afraid to even get up on the mound? Because that probably hurt having a 100-mile-an-hour ball drilled into your head.
Right.
And so is that fear going to affect your play in any way? Let alone something in business, in your relationships, and just life as a father, as a mother, as a brother, sister, son, daughter. anything can change your perception of life. I mean, here's a great example of how we think we're in kind of in charge of our perceptions too. This is a, a wild research study that was done where some actors went into a park like Central Park or one of these big parks where people hang out on benches and read newspapers and magazines and books and things. And what they would do is these actors would go up to the people they saw that were just hanging out there, and they would sit down next to them, and they had a cup of coffee. They say, I hate to bother you, but would you mind holding my coffee? I need to text my mom really quick. She's in the hospital. Oh, yeah, I'll hold your coffee. Half the people had iced coffee, the other half people had hot coffee. Person texted on their phone and they put it back in their pocket. Thank you, grabbed the coffee and walked off. About a half an hour later, a researcher would wander by with a clipboard and say, hey, excuse me, I see you're sitting here. We're doing a research study about this story on this piece of paper. It takes about 2 minutes to read. And there's two questions we want to ask. I'll give you $20 for 3 minutes of your time. And so, sure, most of the people would do about something like 97, 98. And of course, they're the people who had just held the coffee a half an hour before. And they would read this story. And the two questions were about the character traits and attributes of the main character. And the people who held the iced coffee, 81% described the main character as cold and aloof. 80% of the people who held the hot coffee described them as warm and engaging. So it has nothing really to do with your own perception of the world. And there's a great marketing tip for you. If you're having a meeting with investors for your business or clients or something, hand them a hot chocolate or hot coffee or hot tea or hot cider or something. They'll feel that you are a warm person, an engaging person. Never hand them an ice drink. And so, but we feel that a lot of times we are in control of our own perceptions and we're not.
Right.
And that's just a recent research study. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that have been done over the last, 60 years or so. And so we see that with the news and we see that with commercials. We see that with politicians. They know how to manipulate, they know how to influence. And if we can do it as easily as handing somebody a hot drink or a cold drink, then what else is happening in our world? And so when you really have to be aware of your surroundings, you know, what is influencing you? What podcasts are you listening to? What music are you listening to? What news are you listening to?
I share. I've got to share a little bit before you
Sure.
go on, because one of my favorite things, and I saw this, I didn't believe it because I saw it on the TV show, and oh my God, TV shows, right? It was on the TV show was Why Am I Blanking? I'll figure it out as we talk. But he talked to it was a lawyer who said, you know, we're well read, and we've observed that some people sometimes struggle with the color red, and they kept on using red on different points one day in court. And
Hmm.
then the next day, they said, you know, are we do we receive subconscious messages? The answer is yes. Because yesterday I said red 5 times, 6 times, can't remember the number. He says,
Hmm.
and look at all of you. What color are you all wearing in some way? And everyone was
Oh,
wearing
whoa.
red.
That's wild.
And I'm like, that's a TV show, right? It's not
Yeah.
true. No, there's a research that shows
Yeah.
that if you say and I can't remember all the words, but it was like well read, read about, and they kept on using the word red, and they really tapped into the unconscious, and everyone wore red, and that was something as a research study that I saw. Um, so for me, it's like reminding myself that we absorb unconscious messages, and the hardest part is that I think consciously sometimes we can challenge them. Sometimes it's hard for us to challenge them. And it's
Yeah.
realizing that that's part of our job, whether as, for me as a therapist, as you as a hypnotherapist, is that we got to challenge those unconscious thoughts that we have on a regular basis.
Yeah. And then it goes towards, and I might not phrase this quite right, but aren't we the sum total of the five people we hang out with the most, something like that? And
Right.
so who are you hanging out with? What might be family, especially if you're younger and still living at home. But what are your friends telling you? And this is especially with guys. There's that whole thing of gotta insult each other and I don't know, make each other kind of feel bad. But
No, I think that that's what, maybe, we can switch gears here. We talked a lot about this stuff. But one of the things that, I one of my clients recently, and this is something that I wanted to ask you, is that I just want to get rid of stress. I always want to be happy or something to that effect. And I had said on a therapeutic standpoint, I'm like, if you're always happy, you'll never know what happiness is. You need to know
Yeah.
bad stuff. And then I talked about stress. I'm like, we need stress. In my experience is that, and again, I'm going to turn to you for this question too. But what I've said to him is like, the day I stop having some stress in my body is the day I'm dead. And I think that stress can be helpful, but I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
In terms of stress in the body and the mind, even, it can be very helpful. Back in the 1920s, I believe, maybe in the 1930s, there was two psychotherapists, I believe, or at least researchers of behavior, and they created what they call the Yerkes-Dodson law of arousal.
Hmm,
Now, the idea being is that we need a little bit of arousal, stress, just to get out of bed in the morning. It's that pressure of knowing that report is due on, at the end of the week. It's the pressure of knowing you're going to meet with investors for your new business, maybe tomorrow, to get that PowerPoint done. Who wants to sit and do a PowerPoint presentation? Who wants to, write the next chapter of their book if they're not really into writing? So it's a little bit of pressure maybe from the publisher, a little bit of pressure from the meeting that's coming up, a little bit of pressure that the homework is due that actually gets us going. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be stressed and anxious to the point of panic because, but you do need that little bit of stress, a little bit of adrenaline going to get to the starting line so you can win the race. And so what they found is there's this curve in terms of performance and stress level, performance and stress level. There's a curve that, yeah, right around here is a great place to be in terms of arousal. It gets you to the finish line. It gets the work done.
right,
But when it peaks and goes to the other end, it's like then you got fatigue, then you got exhaustion, then you got panic, then you got stress, and your work suffers.
right,
You're not breathing well, so less oxygen is going to your brain. The brain takes 20% of the oxygen you breathe out. If you're not breathing well because you're filled with anxiety and panic and you're tired and you're exhausted, of course your work's going to suffer. So a little bit of stress is necessary just to, again, get out of bed in the morning, get the kids off to school and get to work on time. Doesn't mean it has to be drudgery. It can be fun. You
correct.
can be singing your favorite songs with your kids while you're doing it all. But it does need a certain sense of, again, what they call arousal to get to the point of excelling. But once you reach that peak, now you've gone into you're breaking down and to the point where you're burned out and you're not going to do your good work. And so, yeah, stress is necessary. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of it. I don't know that you need or want to get rid of anxiety and fear. I mean, fear is that thing that keeps us from walking down the dark alley at midnight, even though it's a shortcut home. No, take to the lighted streets, keep to the crowded streets, and yeah, may it'll take you 15 minutes to walk home a little bit longer. Don't walk down the dark alley. Don't, here in at least down in the Southwest, down in southern Arizona, it would not be unusual to be walking out in nature in a beautiful trail out in the desert, and there's a rattlesnake in the trail. It's not your friend. Don't walk towards it and pet it. You see a baby bear cub out in the forest, don't walk towards it. That fear and that anxiety is going to keep you away from that. That's the warning system, the safety protocol set up to keep us alive. Don't stand so close to the edge of the Grand Canyon. The fear is there for a reason. And so I don't know that you want to get rid of it. It's just like those, I don't know if this is a real medical condition. I've seen it on, fictionalized medical shows and things, but people who can't feel pain.
Yes, that's a true thing,
That's
actually.
true. And so, of course, they're going to have more broken bones. They're going to have more burns on them because they don't know they're touching a hot pot. They don't know they're touching the hot stove. And so that's what the pain is for. That's what for the stress is for. That's or not the stress, but the anxiety is for, the fear is for, is to keep us safe and alive and protected. So to a certain extent, you don't want to get rid of it. But on the other hand, you need to make it work for you. You need to be in control of it, not the other way around. And when you're feeling that anxiety and the stress, that's a good time to sit and think, okay, what is in my environment that is causing the anxiety, the panic, the fear? And don't wait till it's a level 10. Catch this stuff when it's a 2, 3, right? Right in that level of this is manageable. Something's going on. Oh, it's because I got that speech tomorrow at the big meeting and I don't feel prepared. Okay, now you need to prepare more for that speech. Does that mean finding some people to practice with? Does that mean working more on your PowerPoint presentation? Do you need to hire somebody to help you with it? What do you need to do? Because that's a signal that there's something not right. Don't
Right.
ignore it because then it gets to a level 10, when it gets to a level 11, then it may be too late and you are in that breakdown area. You're in that panic and then you're not thinking rationally. So if you can catch this stuff when it's a 2, and that's right where you're able to ignore it too.
Right.
It's like, it's a 2 and I got to get the kids from school but if you can catch that stuff early on, it's a great learning tool. A
I
lot of
agree.
people, the big one of the big fears that people have is fear of public speaking. And so,
The most common one, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, it's even something ridiculous more than death or something.
Yeah.
And so, if that's still a thing. And so, the fear of public speaking, a big part of that is just you're not practiced enough to feel comfortable.
Right.
Listen to Tony Robbins talk about his early days. He was really nervous and he was not very good. Listen to any public speaker. They all started off at Toastmasters or doing poorly at the big meeting and things, and they practiced and they practiced and they practiced and they practiced. Listen to any actor. No, I was terrible when I started. Any dancer, any musician. I think Jimmy Page or Eddie Van Halen or whoever the great guitar players are. You think they were awesome when they took their first guitar lesson? No,
Go
they
listen to episode 1 of Finding Your Way Through Therapy. You'll see I've evolved.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in terms of public speaking, not only can, of course, you can use hypnotherapy to help with the confidence, to allay some of those fears, some of that anxiety and that panic, especially if, let's say, back in the 6th grade, you went up to do your history report in front of class and it didn't go very well because your model fell apart and you stammered and you talked, you forgot what you're supposed to say and all the kids laughed and yeah, that's embarrassing, that's humiliating. And maybe they started mocking you by stuttering blah, 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 for the
Right.
next couple of weeks because kids are mean. And so you've associated now that being in front of people is dangerous. So yeah, 20, 25 years later, 30 years later, you got to get up and do the presentation at the big meeting in front of the investors. And so yeah, you're going to be scared and nervous because your mind's screaming at you, yeah, that's a dangerous situation. 30 years ago in the 6th grade, everybody laughed at you. So you don't want to do that again. Your mind is
Right.
for you. Your subconscious, your conscious mind, your mind is for you. It may not seem like that sometimes, but is 100% on your side. It's just trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you safe. It's for your survival. And your survival is this filing cabinet of all the hurt and pain you've been through, the humiliation, the embarrassment, the shame, the guilt. It's all in that filing cabinet. If you're filtering your life, all the things you see, smell, taste, touch, hear through your day, you're filtering it through that. If anything registers one of those files, you'll get the warning signals.
Right.
They'll turn on and they'll come in the form of anxiety or anger or fear. And the big thing again with public speaking is like, okay, that happened. That's something that can be dealt with hypnotherapy. But the kind of part 2 of that is now you need to practice being a public speaker if that's going to be your thing.
Right.
Do you need to go to Toastmasters? You need to create your own group. Do you need to get your friends together so you can practice 3, 4, 5 times before the meeting? You
Right.
know, just don't write it the night before and hope it's going to go well. You know.
Well, while we were talking, I actually looked it up. It's called congenial insensitivity to pain. And I can't even pronounce the last word, but
Yeah.
it's how rare is it? One out of 125 million people.
Whoa,
So
that's
it is a real thing. It is, however, extremely rare. I mean,
yeah.
if in the
Is that a
US, there's probably
genetic
three
thing or
cases.
is it? Is it a brain thing?
It's a disorder of the genetics and
Whoa.
usually associated, unfortunately, with people with developmental disabilities.
Wow. That is
Anyway,
crazy.
just wanted to show that because, I'm looking at the time. We already did almost an hour.
I know we're
We're
talking
just
about, oh, we'll do
yapping
about
away.
45 minutes or half an hour.
I love
It's,
this.
yeah, it's fun
No,
talking with
no,
you,
no.
Steve.
It's great to talk to people who are very interesting, and I like to have the dialogues around that. But what I'd like you to do is to maybe tell people how maybe to reach you if you got anything that
Oh,
you
sure.
want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the name of my practice is Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy, though, like I said, nowadays I work with people around the country and get, technically around the world. With Zoom connections and all that. It's very safe. It's a very wonderful way of doing it because you don't have to drive across town on a Friday afternoon to get to your appointment. Works very well for us. What the research says, that's interesting, a lot of sociological research about Zoom one-on-one sessions, whether it's talk therapy or hypnotherapy or doctor's appointment, is Zoom sessions work as well as in person. And some studies even show it works better than because of that idea that you're relaxed, you're comfortable, you feel safe in your homes. But I know that was a mouthful with Arizona Integrative Hypnotherapy, but I live in Flagstaff, Arizona. So if you just search on Google Flagstaff Hypnosis, you'll see me pop up. Another real easy way is I have a test anxiety course, ACE Any Test, AAT, ACE Any Test. So if you just go to aceanytest.com, you can email me from there as well.
Well,
And really just to get on the phone and talk with people, you know.
I'm gonna put the link in the show notes so people can reach you. And yeah, for the record, I joke around with it's no longer a joke, but I have been doing Zoom or online counseling for about 9 years now. And I tell people I did it before the kids thought it was cool. So I know it works. It doesn't work for everyone. I get that too, but it does definitely work.
No, I get it. I get it. I understand wanting to do it in person. I enjoy doing it in person. I like that face to face, but it's like I had the opportunity. This is no joke. I worked with a professional basketball player the other day from Iceland.
Yeah, cool.
This is like, this is extraordinary, or Vienna, or I literally worked with somebody in Bulgaria at the American University there. And it's just like, it's just extraordinary. You get the time zone right. Man, it's amazing. Or people from Flagstaff, they move to wherever, Austin or Miami or New York or wherever, and it's like, man, let's keep working.
The portability is there, but
Yeah,
I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to
yeah,
talking to you again, hopefully.
yeah. You too, Steve. I really appreciated it.
Thank you. Well, that completes episode 182. I really appreciate you, Craig. Thank you so much for coming on Finding Your Way Through Therapy. Episode 183 will be a review of the year. I don't always get a chance to do it, but this year we're going to do it. There's a lot of stuff. It's also a lot of stuff that I've been thinking about, and I think I'm going to start talking about a few changes I want to make. I think I've dropped in, some hints here and there, but I hope you come back and listen to that episode.
Please like, subscribe, and follow this podcast on your favorite platform. A glowing review is always helpful. And as a reminder, this podcast is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. If you're struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, please reach out to a professional counselor for consultation. If you are in a mental health crisis, call 988 for assistance. This number is available in the United States and Canada.